This is a gentle note that this episode talks about miscarriage and pregnancy loss in detail. So please take care while listening, and thank you for joining. Okay, today we have a return guest for BDA Baby, Jessica Zucker, who is a LA-based clinical psychologist, and she specializes all in reproductive and maternal mental health. She has a new book that is coming out, or by the time this is out, it will be out. And it's called Normalize It, Upending the Silent Stigma and Shame That Shapes Women's Lives. Before, when she was previously on, we talked about her book called I Had a Miscarriage and all about the stigma that comes with that and the movement that she was starting. So we're going to talk about that and her new book. So excited to hear about your new book, because your last book, when we chatted a couple years ago, your last book was so incredibly done and filled with so much information, talking about a subject being miscarriages that is, oftentimes uncomfortable majority of the time for anybody to talk about. And you really have made it a huge mission of yours to take that stigma away and really open up the conversation to allow people to talk about their experiences, and also gain knowledge on how to support those in their lives that might be experiencing or have experienced a miscarriage or pregnancy loss in some way. So welcome back. I'm so happy to be connected again and talking to you about your new book. How have you been?
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you. I'm doing well. I'm in disbelief that I have a second book coming out, and I'm very excited about it.
I
So
mean, what an accomplishment. It's always like, I feel like, if you have experience doing a book, you know that this is like giving birth leading up
I
to it.
think
It's
it's
like,
almost more than that.
I
I've
know
realized
it's a crazy labor of love to
it
be able to
sure
put a
is.
book together. And also, it's so much work, it's so much energy, so much time. And then it comes up to, actually getting the book out there. And it's like this whole experience. But this book is, your previous book, I Had a Miscarriage, was, about a very specific topic.
Yes.
Um, and I want to talk about this book as well, because they're both such amazing books filled with such great information, and also come with such great movements for women and women's empowerment and also just women's well-being. But let's talk about this book because it's brand new.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to show you the cover.
Amazing.
It's wild. So, I'm a psychologist in Los Angeles. I specialize in women's reproductive and maternal mental health and have done so for about 15 years at this point. I come to the field with a background in public health. And when I got my PhD, my hope was to sort of marry my background in public health with my clinical interests and focus specifically on women's reproductive rights and women's mental health. At that point, I was just passionate about all things women's health. Nothing had in my life up until that point had informed this. I was just passionate about it, excited to help others until I was 16 weeks into my second pregnancy and I had a miscarriage while I was home by myself. I was coached by phone by my OBGYN how to cut the umbilical cord while my husband darted through Los Angeles traffic to get home to me. My OB instructed me to bring the fetus in a bag to her office. And to make matters all the more traumatic and dramatic, I had to then undergo an unmedicated DNC. So I share all of this because inevitably, this horrendous, heartbreaking experience changed the course of my professional and my personal life. All the while, I had been sitting across from women talking about pregnancy loss, infant loss, stillbirth, terminating for medical reasons, and hearing about the feelings of isolation, anguish, alienation. But until it happened to me, until I went through it firsthand, I could, of course, not relate. So after this experience, I turned to the research and it found that a majority of women are blaming themselves, feeling a sense of shame, and even feeling a sense of body failure in the aftermath of loss. Even though I had been hearing about this inside the walls of my office, it was mind-blowing to me and honestly enraging in a way that people are thinking that they had a hand in this unfortunate outcome. So this led me to start the I Had a Miscarriage movement, this campaign with my first New York Times piece back in 2014. And really, the aim of that was to compassionately urge people around the world to join me in speaking up about this all too common topic that is ubiquitously hush hush. Why are people feeling this way? Why are people told not to talk about it? So, this eventually led to my second book, Normalize It, Upending the Silent Stigma and Shame That Shape Women's Lives, because I realized that this doesn't just apply to pregnancy loss. It applies to everything from girlhood through menopause and all the things in between.
Obviously, the first subject of talking about miscarriages in your first book and the movement that has come with that is such, a heavy and intense one. And then also having your background, having spent so much time listening to women in your office and trying to be there for women, and then having this kind of shift of perspective and experience, having it happen to you and going through that very traumatic event. What has it been like to put together this book, Normalize It, that is, still bringing in experience from your first book, but also, tackling other subjects and spaces as well?
Yeah, thank you for that. My hope is that this book actually invites all the female readers in, right? Because my first book was so specific. And even though 1 in 4 pregnancies results in loss, not everybody wants to read about miscarriage. But I realized that so many topics related to women's lives are silenced, are stigmatized, are filled with shame. And so this is sort of an invitation to question that. So throughout the book, you'll see patient composites. They're, of course, fictitious. They're not based on real people to protect people's privacy, but they illustrate just how important it is to replace silence with storytelling. So I give examples even as simple as writing in a journal, because not everybody wants to get on Instagram and share their dirty laundry
Right.
publicly.
Right.
But writing in a journal, for example, is such a safe way to get it from inside your body out of you. Even if somebody burns that journal afterward, great. My biggest concern with the mental health crisis that we're in and the loneliness epidemic that we seem to still be locked in is that when we keep our important experiences within ourselves, we devolve, like we suffer, we turn to addiction, we turn to things that are not necessarily good for ourselves. And so whether it's a journal, whether it's therapy, whether it's turning to a neighbor, whether it is, getting on a TED Talk stage and sharing openly about something important and inviting others into it. Whatever the case may be, my hope is that we can once and for all put an end to this strident trifecta of silence, stigma, and shame.
With this book, you obviously talk about a bunch of different topics in one book
Yes,
this time.
right.
What is your hope with putting a book out like this that has so much information about so many different sensitive subjects?
I inadvertently got on a soapbox. I myself was not really a social media person. I'm actually sort of introverted when it comes to public speaking. And so I didn't even plan to start this, viral hashtag or, this movement or whatever. It just, the passion ignited in me and then I couldn't stop myself. But then I realized, wait a second, in a way, I'm being short sighted here, only focusing on pregnancy and infant loss, because this applies to our experience in its entirety. And so, my ultimate aim is to help women feel less alone over the course of their lives. But also, yesterday I was talking to my mom, and she's a couple of years from 80. And I was saying, give this to your friends if you want to. This could be such a beautiful opportunity for reflection about one's life. So it's not like you have to be living through it in this moment to actually get something from it. You could also be 25 and reading it and thinking about the things that you are currently going through. So I think that no matter what stage of life, it applies. And my hope, again, is that it inspires people to speak a little more comfortably out loud with the people around them, with their loved ones. Again, whether they want to, hop on a stage with a microphone about it or not. Um, I hope that it helps the shame dissipate,
Mhm.
because we talk to our mothers, we talk to our aunts, we talk to our sisters and grandmothers, and there's so many hidden stories. There's so many pockets of pain. Why? We've been told to be, you know, quiet about the things that we experience that society just doesn't want to hear too much about.
Can you talk about, in your experience, talking to so many women, diving deep into the subject of maternal mental health? What are the
Mm.
big takeaways that you're seeing now in conversation with women that we should be aware of women experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the statistic is 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 women have, experienced perinatal or postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. And this, I think, is tragic and terrifying that we live in a country that is not making accessible the help that women need. And because of the silence, stigma, shame, strident trifecta, people end up feeling that they can't reach out for help because they think others will judge them. Wait, I tried so hard to become a mother. I'm finally a mother. How is it that I'm not excited? Or how is it that I'm not feeling connected to my baby? Or why is it that I sort of wish that I could get my old life back? So, maternal ambivalence is also a topic we don't talk enough about. These kinds of issues make women feel like they are isolated, they are alone. And the problem is, if they don't get help during this time, it can become an intractable depression or an ongoing anxiety disorder. But the help is there, the help is available. And so, maternal mental health is incredibly important for so many reasons. It's important for the mother, right? Because once somebody has a baby, everybody's coming over to see that baby. It's so rare that people are checking in on the mother herself. Also, there's the expectation that she looks like she never had a baby. So body image wise, there's all this pressure, especially in, this area where we live, to look like we were never pregnant at all. But when women are struggling psychologically in the aftermath of having a baby, what are they supposed to do? They're often met with platitudes, I think, that make them feel like, oh, maybe this person's right. Maybe I'm just not sleeping when the baby's sleeping, or maybe I am, making too much of this. If you're struggling and it's been over 6 weeks, which is like the time that they say that the baby blues can last, it's time to get help. And no amount of exercise or eating right or getting sunlight or going to acupuncture, all of these things that people are suggesting sometimes, in the aftermath of having a baby because they just want you to feel better. Um, these things alone will not turn the important corner of feeling more connected to yourself, more connected to your baby, and more excited about the path forward.
Because if you look at the whole setup of life after when you become a mother, and even if you're pregnant, experience pregnancy loss, or if you have a kid and experience pregnancy loss, or if you don't experience pregnancy loss and you have a new baby, or even if you have a 5-year-old, or there are so many different seasons of motherhood that are challenging. Plus, you have a lack of sleep. Plus, you're navigating a new space in a new territory and you're doing your best. And you have other things going on in life. And some seasons there's more chaos going on or more things on your plate than others. And a lot of people also have relationships or family or friends. So there are a lot of different things that can overwhelm anyone.
Yes.
And what do you think that we can do to help women feel comfortable just saying, like, this is a really tough season for me?
That's the thing. That's hopefully all of those answers are hopefully in this book, right?
Mhm.
It's like, can we dare ourselves to take the risk of ultimate vulnerability? Because a lot of people say that they don't want to share because they're afraid of being judged or they're afraid of being turned away. But what if we're sharing for ourselves first and foremost? What
Mhm.
if the person's reaction is not the main reason that we're sharing? Because we don't know. It could be our mother that says the wrong thing. I
Mhm.
give an example of that in my first book about how my mom, after my pregnancy loss, said something sort of outlandish, and I was taken aback. We later, of course, talked it through for me to understand where she was coming from. But we just don't know. However, the risk, I believe, is worth taking. Why? Because if we don't, we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not tending to the very burning things that are happening within ourselves. And if it lands in a way that's not comfortable, we've said it. And if you're close enough to the person who says something potentially inappropriate or, off base, maybe we can talk that through. Maybe not in that moment if you're too tired or, you're dealing with all the newness of motherhood. But we have to take care of ourselves first. So, how can we support each other in doing that? By modeling it. And that's why my new book begins, the preface begins with my miscarriage story. Why? Because I'm trying to show the reader that I took that chance. I didn't know what would happen. It could have impacted my career. It could have impacted, my family. It could have impacted so many things. And I decided it was worth it because I wanted to stand up and say, I had a second trimester miscarriage in the context of my home. It broke me for a time. Here I am because I know I'm not alone and I don't want anybody else to feel that they are. And I guess it worked, for lack of a better way of putting it. I mean, it did sort of bring me so much support. It did shore up this sense that we can be in community amidst our biggest traumas and tragedies. And again, it won't always work out that way. It's not like every person who announces to a friend that they have postpartum depression, we don't know that they're going to be met with like, I've got you and we're going to be here for you and we're going to get you through it. But the more people talk about what they're actually going through, the sooner we find out and the sooner we do feel a sense of agency and sort of power, for lack of a better phrase.
For the people who are listening to this or, are going to buy your book and read it and want to know more about just all the work that you're doing, if you feel like you know someone who might be experiencing maternal mental health challenges, whatever phase of life or parenthood that might be, what do you suggest as far as support goes on how to approach that? Do
Mm,
you approach it? And
mm.
what is the best way to do that?
It's sensitive. You're right. And I do think it's so specific to the person. And it really depends, I think, on the context and the relationship itself. But I will say what I said before. I kind of stand by this. Like, I think it's worth the risk. So just saying something like, how are you doing? And then they're like, well, I mean, you could give the example better because maybe you have somebody in mind, but oh, I'm fine. It's fine. When we hear that sort of top level response that
Mhm.
doesn't sound very full of detail or richness or profundity, it's sort of like, are you though? Um, and so I think that can be the opening. And if you've observed this person enough and you knew them before and you know that things seem very, very different, that could be your time. And I think saying something like, you know, I'm here for you if you want to talk about anything you're going through. And perhaps opening up a little bit oneself can help encourage that person to be all the more open as well. So you don't have to have gone through the exact same thing in order to say, like, I know it's hard. So maybe you say, I struggled so much in the beginning and I wonder, how you're feeling. And if you didn't, don't say that. But I'm just saying, like, anything that you can genuinely relate to, perhaps you bring up.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it gets her to say, yeah, this is harder than I thought, you know. And then that's the opportunity to say, there's help available. I'm here to help you find that. You have so much love around you. I mean, however you put it. I mean, it's hard to speculate because of
Yeah.
the context of the friendship or the relationship. But I think that's when we can step into, and it's not about diagnosing them because even me as a psychologist, I tread lightly with friends, of course. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, it seems like you might be struggling with postpartum depression, because we really don't know until we know. But just saying there's help available, you know, where are you at right now in terms of your emotional temperature? Like, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 is what I say to my patients to really get a sense of like where on the scale of normalcy, meaning their usual norm,
Mhm.
where are they right now? And then just letting the person know that you're in it with them for the long haul. We have to tread gingerly. I was about to say, we can suggest therapy, but you don't, that's not very practical to just say to somebody, like, did you know that there's great therapists who specialize in this?
There are so many different seasons of motherhood where really being able to stay connected to your friends and your family is such a huge part of it because they are really, the people who could also be sounding boards for you and also be able to say, like, hey, something is a little bit more intense right now, or, be able to judge a situation or help in a situation maybe when you need help the most. So I think those are all
Exactly.
really great tips and words of wisdom. And I'm so excited for this book to come out. And you're really doing such amazing work about subjects that are not easy to talk about and not easy to really prompt conversation starters to allow people and give people the space to feel less alone and learn
Mhm.
from others' experiences. So Thank you so much for coming and talking about this.
Of
Show us the
course.
book again so we
Yes.
can make sure.
Actually, can I read a quick excerpt to give people a sense of inspiration?
Yes.
It's here. Okay. Every time we dare to talk about the hard things, we create ripple effects that ultimately help shape and shift the master narrative, the stigmas, the shoulds. In the face of this revolutionary zeitgeist shift, we have the chance to exist in the mess without feeling we are the mess. The truth is that living in the gray in between, away from the all or nothing black and white binaries, might be the most challenging place to reside. This is the place of vulnerability. This is the place of openness and authenticity. Maybe that's why society tries so desperately to evade it. But it is perhaps the only place where we feel truly seen, truly understood, and truly ourselves. This may be the only place from which we can acknowledge the entire spectrum of our emotions and experiences, the place where we can lay it all out. No hiding, no pretending, no siphoning of feelings.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much to Jessica Zucker. You guys can check out her new book and her previous book online, and also follow her on her social media to get a lot of amazing tips and information about mental health, and specifically women's mental health. And thanks for joining.